Democratic Boys Are Back in Town Roundtable, Chet Peterson World Headquarters in the city of Fairfax. Susan Platt, former candidate for lieutenant governor, losing the June primary to Justin Fairfax, has crashed the party.
With over 200,000 votes.
Good to have you here, Susan. I picked Fairfax to win. I was right, but good to have you here. Susan, you're like a bad penny. You just keep showing up, but I appreciate your persistence.
Can I say something here? Let me just say to those out there that did vote for me, thank you so much. It was such a rewarding experience for me. You know, I've never been on that side of the political spectrum. I've always been behind the scenes. And I've been for years, as you all know, for the last 8-10 years, pushing women and getting involved in politics. And when I couldn't push one enough to enter the race, I felt the need to do so for statewide.
So it sounds like you're going to vote for Vogel.
Let me just finish here. And why I am so cherished with the votes and the rewarding experience that I had is because I met so many people who want to improve their lives, get better wages, get access to quality health care, and I think we have a ticket right now in the Democratic Party that will do that a lot better. And I will tell you, I'm also really proud. I want to do a shout out to Wednesday's Women, which is a new series I started promoting women running for office in Virginia for the first time. And I'm honored to say a good number of these women told me that they put their hat in the ring because I was brave enough to do it statewide, and they're doing it now. And I think we bring some more to the table. And I think people are so fed up, and you talk about this, John, with their representatives in Washington, that they're looking more toward the state and local level to directly affect their needs quicker. And I think that's what
we can agree. And I also agree with the fact that more women need to get involved and get elected. That's why I'm going to vote for Jill Vogel for lieutenant governor. We're with Ben Tribbett, Susan Platt, Chap Peterson, State Senator Scott Servell, and blessing us, gracing us with his presence, State Senator Dave Marston. Dave, looking good, as always.
Feeling good.
It's an everyday
John,
occurrence, though, right?
Yeah.
Good to have you with us.
Good to be here. Listen, I got in a little bit late, but interestingly enough, the whole idea of the lost cause, the myth of the lost cause, that didn't start right after the war. It started in the 1880s under Robert E. Lee's son, Fitzhugh Lee, was he a nephew? I can't remember. He was a family member, but he was governor at the time. But the interesting, let's talk about two Lee statues here that I think gets to the heart of the argument. First off, it's very difficult to have a rationed, reasoned conversation about statues when one of them's been adopted by the neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. It just makes the argument, very, very difficult, or the discussion very, very difficult to have. But let's take a look at the Lee statue on Monument Avenue and the Lee statue that's in the old House Chamber in the Capitol, which is sort of a quasi-museum. The statue in the old House Chamber sits on a spot where Robert E. Lee took command of the Confederate armies. Has great historical context. That's where he came in. That's where the Confederate Congress was meeting at the time, and that's when Lee took command. You go out to Monument Circle. Or Lee Circle on Monument Avenue, and you got a guy on a horse who was commander of the Confederate armies, and it was built during a time when the South was trying to rebuild its morale and its credibility, and they reached back into the past for a very regrettable war as the means of rebuilding themselves. And so you got this guy on a horse sitting in a circle. If you tried to put up a plaque there, people would have to run across traffic in the circle around it to go see that historical context. And so for kids and the people who need this historical context, who need these lessons, that's all he becomes, is who's that guy on the horse. Same with Jeb Stuart. You can't get to these things. That's why museums, cemeteries, are the places to put these things. And I'd fight like crazy to keep Robert E. Lee in the Capitol, because that's historical context. That's where he belongs. And so that's the kind of discussion we need to have. We need to get these folks to a place where we can regain the ability to have that well-informed discussion and not be arguing over guys on horses sitting in parks or sitting in the middle of highways.
You think they should be in museums and cemeteries, yet there's a monument in a Fairfax cemetery honoring Robert Lee in a cemetery where people are dead.
Yeah.
And just today, Chap Peterson showed the picture. He went over there at 5 a.m. to pay tribute to his family who's buried there and has been defaced.
Oh.
So the problem is once you start saying you want to erase history, it's George Orwell, 1984. There's nowhere to stop.
Now, I don't think anybody is trying to erase history here.
What about the people who defaced that
We're
monument?
trying to get it into the proper context. When the KKK adopts Robert E. Lee, it makes it awfully daggone hard, John, to sit there and have a discussion
Who the hell
over.
cares? You know, there's who the hell cares what the K? Nobody cares about these people except the whack job media. Look,
John,
these are such the
somebody
fringe
died because of these
society.
people.
Right.
Well, the people, I mean, they're crazy people, but it's got nothing to do with this. Right? But I go to the Capitol. There's a big statue there of Harry Byrd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Democrat governor, Senator Harry Byrd, right? Segregationist Harry Byrd, right? Member of the KKK. Why is that statue there? Take that down.
Well, that is at least in Capitol Square where you can approach it and you can potentially do, because the Capitol Square is a
So it's
museum
okay
of
if it's on
sorts.
Capitol Square, but it
And
can't
I
be
think
in the
you need to put some context up there and some story about Harry Byrd. Otherwise, he's just this
I think the
guy
point.
in a statue.
I think the point is there needs to be a discussion about it, and you need to have a discussion about all these monuments. And the Harry Byrd statue outside is different from the Robert E. Lee statue inside that has historical context, and it's different than the statue that's on Monument Avenue. And each one of these statues is different.
So now you're going to debate every statue. What about in Maryland the other day where vandals went Monday night and sledgehammered a 220-year-old Christopher Columbus statue because they said he's racist? I mean, this thing, there's no end in sight here, Ben. That's your problem. You guys want to intellectualize this. David makes this very compelling case about this statue and this historical document, and it's all going to be rationalized, yet you got your crazy people going out there and sledgehammering Christopher Columbus.
Can I just say something I think
John,
everyone
hold
will
on a
agree
sec.
on, though? Can I just, I'm going to throw out one statement I think that everybody here will agree?
Yes.
Mike Signer should not be leading this debate.
I agree with that.
John, you can't attack.
Finally, the voice of reason.
John, you can't attack the what you call the crazies on the left while dismissing the crazies on the right.
I don't think
mean,
they have
Crazy
at all.
on the
They're
right
nuts. They have
saying
nothing to do-
somebody.
They have
I know, but I mean, just to give you an example, John. I was sitting at home watching. I get home at like 8, 9 o'clock every night, and I DVR the national news just for curiosity because I want to see what people are seeing on TV. It's the only-
Especially when I'm on CNN.
It's the only thing I want. Yeah, I'm sure. There you go. By the way, Jim Acosta, by the way, great Fairfax County native, Annandale High School graduate, by the way, went to James Madison University, the best university in the world. But I was sitting there watching the news with my kids the other night, right after that torch rally on the UVA grounds. Right. Sitting there watching these guys march along. They played the video of these guys marching along saying the Jews will not replace us. And I had my 10-year-old looks at me and says, "Dad, what are neo-Nazis?" And what he'd heard the KKK too. He's like, "What's the Ku Klux Klan?" I mean, I shouldn't have to explain that to a 10-year-old today, right? And these are conversations that people are having to have with their children because of this stuff. So you can't just like blow it off and say, it's just the media and they're crazy. It's out there and people are worried about it. And people thought this was dead and gone, and well, not only thought it was dead and gone, but it wasn't cool anymore. And now it's out there and people are proudly, boasting it. It's got a lot of people really concerned and frightened. I mean,
They're nuts.
But John, here's the thing: is what's startling is, and I don't know that they've ever done a precise poll on this, but the number of Americans who seem to be saying this kind of thing and this kind of thinking is okay.
I don't think so, David.
Is pretty
No,
scary.
I don't think so. There is nobody that I know or that anybody knows at this table that is in that network who says that. Those people that went
Corey
to
Stewart.
Charleston-
Corey Stewart,
Corey
exactly.
Stewart, the person who came within 1%
Yeah.
of being nominated to be the Republican candidate for governor, because this is a large part of the Republican base. Corey Stewart absolutely does, and that proves the point that this is not just a fringe movement of people that don't
Okay.
exist. Because Corey Stewart just came within 1% of that, running on that platform.
And they're trying to intimidate. Let me just interject
And
for a
I've
second
talked
here.
to them. I've talked to these folks. They're out there.
Wait, can I tell you, when I was running and I came out for a commission on addressing this, Fairfax Underground came out and put a picture of me online with a swinging noose. They put on my home address, my home phone number. They came and parked outside my house where I had to get the police to drive by. And the things they did to me just because I wanted a commission to address these issues. Those are crazies.
Yeah, well, they're nuts.
And those are there's crazies.
Crazy people in the world. What does that have to do with this conversation?
Form a large part of the Republican base.
Oh, that's so ridiculous.
Because
they don't form a part of the Republican base.
How
did Corey Stewart come so close then?
They attacked me, and that's what happened.
Corey Stewart came close because people don't want statues removed and their history changed. You guys don't get it. That's why you're going to lose again.
Right,
you want to think it's about neo-Nazis or something else. It is a ridiculous conversation to have because these are the fringe elements of society. They're crazy people. They have nothing to do with
Can we talk actually about a more disturbing topic?
Yes, go ahead, Chet.
The Washington Redskins offensive line.
That's pathetic. All right, we're going to do that. That's a good segue.
Their offensive line play.
Chap, let's go talk about the Redskins, something that we all can agree on. Offensive line, not very good.
Yeah, I've been concerned, and I'm just going to come out and say I don't like the way their offensive line's getting off the ball. I don't see the aggressiveness. I don't see the killer instinct. And I know it's preseason. Everyone says don't panic. But the problem is with the Jay Gruden team, when they don't play well in preseason, that means they start slow in the season. They lose the first couple games. That's what happened last year, put us behind the 8 ball. I really think that they need to make some changes on the offensive line. I love Brandon Scherf, but and I think he's got to stay. Trent's obviously got to stay. I think they need a new left guard. I don't think Laval's getting it done. So I just think they need to shake it up. I think also they need to get the ball to Terrell Pryor. I think he's a playmaker, but if you don't get him the ball, he can't score. And I think they got to get Jordan on the field, Jordan Reed. So, anyways, that's really what's been on my mind. I mean, we've been talking about monuments for 75 minutes, so I just thought I'd shake it up.
Go ahead with the Redskins.
Can I ask John a question?
Yes, Susan.
And I'm so glad that my friend, former State Senator Emily Miller, has joined us. So I'm not
Emily,
the only one
good to have you
in
with
the room
us.
here. But I wonder how you feel, John, about the prospects of Donald Trump shutting down the government so that we Virginians will have to pay for his frickin' wall on the southern border.
Horrible idea. Horrible idea. We need a clean budget reconciliation bill. I know the deficit hawks out there and the Freedom Caucus are going to go bananas over this and what I'm going to say, but we need a clean budget bill. The debt's going to go up. It's gone up under Obama. It's gone up under George Bush. Short-term pain, long-term gain. We need to get this thing behind us, keep the government open. We'll get the funding for the wall. The key to the Trump presidency is you got to get a major tax reform package done. That's got to be the focus, not the deficit right now. We can fix that later. If you can get tax reform done and you can get the economy growing at 3.5%, the world in America changes. Republicans will win in 2018 because the great unifier, jobs, wages, economic prosperity. At 1% growth, it's simply not going to get there. We need 3.5. That'll add 10 million jobs. That'll add $3 trillion to the coffers, which will bring the deficit down. And wages will go up by an estimated $17 trillion. So $7 trillion. So that's what we need. Tax reform, not government shutdown.
John, what does that?
Hope I've answered your question.
You did, and I'm so glad to hear that because it's going to cost Virginians a lot.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Plus, it'll ensure that Gillespie can't win. Like we've already been down this road.
That's what
we've
happened
been down this road. It's stupid.
John, what does this tax reform look like, though?
Nobody knows.
They put the difference in with the tax reform, the way the administration is running this, and repeal and replace is the president never got behind any plan, and so they left it up to the gang that can't shoot straight, which is Republican leadership in Washington that screw up everything they do, and they blew that. And I think the president learned his lesson. So what you're going to be looking at is repatriation, getting that $3 trillion back, lowering corporate taxes so that we can get in line with the rest of the world, lower middle income taxes, lower brackets. We got to get the economy going at 3.5%. If we can do that, David, a rising tide is going to lift all boats.
John, what I read is that Mnuchin and that group or whatever, they're talking about capping the deductibility of mortgage interest. They're talking about getting rid of the deductibility of state income taxes and local income taxes and getting rid of the deduction for, I think, corporate interest. But the things I heard were things that would actually cause a lot of Virginians to pay more taxes. But that was what came out that they were sort of focusing on as being likely a couple.
Well, I assume they would lower
ago.
the rates if they did all
that.
They're
going to lower the rates. I mean, the object is you pay less money to the government. You have more money to invest in the economy. You bring our $3 trillion that's parked overseas home. You lower the corporate tax. You increase investment. And I think if they do those things and we can get the economy growing, that's why Trump, if he can do that, he's going to get reelected again, because jobs and prosperity is the great unifier. A job is not blue, it's not red, it's green.
The fly in the ointment here is after World War II, when our economy, exploded, the jobs were very easy to train people for. And in everything you read from either side of the aisle right now, what you're seeing is there are a lot of jobs out there that people aren't trained for. Those old jobs of pushing boxes around factory floors are gone. And, you need people trained. So before we can make this thing work, we have got to find a way, to get people the skills they need to fill these jobs. I'm very pleased with Ralph Northam's 3G program for getting kids trained in community college and have them get skills, get certified, and then give back to the community. I think that fits a lot of people's idea of how we move forward. But I think, too, is we have to focus a little bit here on the fact that we have to grow the economy up from the bottom a little bit more than we have in the past. The trickle-down thing hasn't worked. Our minimum wage is stuck very, very low. These folks.
Wages.
It's
wage
a terrible
growth.
thing,
No wage
and
growth.
I don't know that just having this great economy will force those wages up. I think we need to move the minimum wage. I've been fighting for that for the last 3 or 4 years, but we need to push that up. There's still, I think, 125,000 Virginians earning the actual minimum wage or less because of the exceptions we put in for agriculture and working in people's homes and being maids and
we
things
have no
like
argument
that.
there. I mean, look, wages have to go up, and part of the issue is get rid of the overburdensome regulations, which the president is doing, and also to restrict these crazy HB1 visa scams where you get foreigners that come in that take our jobs away. So that's the issue. Susan, I hope I've answered your question. I think a government shutdown would be insanity.
But I think the question is, which Donald Trump are we going to see when this time happens? Are we going to see the presidential Donald Trump, or are we going to see the crazy Uncle Donald John that comes out as we flip our head around? Is he really, he promised Americans that voted for him that the Mexicans were going to pay for this wall.
Yeah, they are.
Well, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
How are they going to do that?
Tariff.
Yeah.
So he's going to shut down the government.
No, he isn't. He's not going to shut the government down.
Well, that's the
What he
question.
just said.
Is it going to be?
Well, that's what he just said in
Is
his
that a
speech.
route? Come on, you guys.
So
You
we
guys.
don't- we don't-
Since when?
You guys are never going to make
After
it
what he said.
2020.
After what he
He's at a
we're not allowed to believe what he
rally.
says. We're
He's
not allowed to
at a
believe what he says at a rally. If he's at a rally, it's not credible.
Ironically,
Come
I
on.
actually believe that more what he says at a rally than what he says in a State of the Union address.
Until he tweets it, it's not real.
Until you see the actual policy, it's Donald Trump at a rally talking to his supporters and firing up his base and throwing things out there, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Is that what
That's who we
presidents do,
elected.
though?
That's what our president does, because that's who we elected, because he's a citizen, not a politician. That's what's driving you guys.
Like it was
crazy.
3 million fewer votes.
I think he thinks he's negotiating with Congress, and he's taking a negotiating position.
Sure.
That's what I think he thinks he's
Just
doing. He
throws that stuff out
doesn't
there.
seem to understand this isn't business; it's government. It's people's lives.
They
but-
know that a government shutdown would be a disaster for them. The key to this presidency now, after he went back on his word in Afghanistan, and now we're back in this war. The key to this presidency now is he's got to get major tax reform done. If he doesn't get that done, he's in big trouble. And so that's got to be the clear
He's
focus.
not in big trouble now.
No, he's doing fine.
Oh my gosh!
John,
Like, who's-
I actually agree that, he punted on, obviously, healthcare reform, okay? Which means
Showed no leadership there at all.
showed no leadership, and Congress couldn't handle it. And ironically, we haven't even talked about the fact Anthem has pulled out of Obamacare and what that means for Virginia.
We'll talk about that at 8 o'clock.
That's a huge issue for us, okay? But the bottom line is, you're right. He needs to have some accomplishment. He doesn't have it now. I agree with you. If he could get a tax bill passed like Reagan did in '86,
Of course, this doesn't count.
that would.
Well, the
Plus
president
something.
says he's done more than any other president at this point in their term than anybody else. Can
Well,
anybody say what
as
it
far
is?
as getting rid of a lot of the regulations, but you got to remember why he had this rally, and this is what the left, just the media, the legacy media can't. They just don't understand what's going on. Here's why he had this rally in Phoenix, and he fired everybody up, because the day before he went back on his word, he campaigned for 2 years on getting the U.S. out of these Middle Eastern wars. All right? 2 years. That was a key platform
Right,
of a lot of people like me that were with him from the beginning. Then he comes on TV, very presidential, and he says, I talked to my generals. Campaign is different than behind the desk, etc. We're going to recommit troops in perpetuity, body bags. Everybody's going to make money. He didn't say that, but that's the bottom line. We've been there 17 years without results. So the next day, the number of callers that I had that were infuriated over this was off the charts. Then what does he do? He goes to Phoenix and he changes the narrative, right?
And
he
our
changes
head starts
with his
spinning.
base, because his base, which is all he has, if that fractures, he's done, right?
He's done.
Some would argue he's done now.
He's done
No, he's
already.
not done now. He's
He's
going to
already
get
done
reelected. He's going to get reelected if he gets tax reform done. But he goes to Phoenix to change the narrative and get it off Afghanistan, because this was a losing battle for him with his base. You know, I appreciate his honesty, but he went against a campaign promise. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. I'll be right back.